Batman Big Bang, somewhere off the coast of Rhode Island, late June 2003. It was a quiet and still night out in the Atlantic Ocean as a cargo ship was sailing on by. As the cargo ship was just going towards its destination, somewhere in Maryland, unbeknownst to them, deep in the lower levels of the cargo ship were several small crates. Well, one of the crates opened up and a man emerges, followed by four other crates opening up, and men were emerging from those crates. Who were they? Nobody knows, but they were not part of the crew. The men make their way to another group of similarly sized crates. Those crates had a label labeled X90, and then beneath the X90 were the words danger, high-powered explosives. And then the short man in the group asked the man that was first to emerge from the crates, asking him, so why a top secret cargo like that is not on some sort of military ship? And then the man answers the short man, well, it's easy. This thing's so top secret that they want to protect it, so they decided to bring it in a standard cargo ship to throw people off, because no one would expect that such a top secret weapon would be in a cargo ship. Instead, they would probably go looking for it on a military ship. It's a very ingenious thing, said the man. And then the man says to the short man, hey, Tiny, finally identifying him, bring the stuff out. So the man, now identified as Tiny, goes over to the crate he emerged from and pulls out two small electronic looking objects and a small electronic looking box. And then he walks over to the other guys, and the leader says to them, alright, put the tracking devices on those two boxes of X90. And then Tiny gives the leader the electronic looking box, and the leader says, I'm going to detonate this third box. The other guys looked at him with shock, and he explains to them that the man who's paying them for this heist only needs two boxes, and he wanted the third specifically to be detonated to send a message. Well, the other guys complied, put the tracking devices on the two boxes of X90, and quietly carried it up to the upper decks, where they tossed it in the water. As soon as they did that, they went back below deck, and the leader had just set up the detonator. He told the guys to grab the life preservers out of their crates, and they did. And those guys put on their life preservers, went above deck, and dove off the ship into the waters below. They all had tracking devices on their life preservers that they activated. Soon, the leader had activated the timer and set it for 3 minutes. He begins to put on his life preserver, activate the tracking device, and then jumps off the ship. As soon as he did that, there was a massive explosion. The cargo ship and all its contents were completely obliterated. There was nothing left but raining debris of twisted metal hitting the waters. After the explosion, 2 motorboats had come to the scene. The first motorboat was picking up the 2 crates of X90, while the second boat were picking up the robbers. As soon as they all got on board, the 2 boats sped off into the night. Their destination, Gotham City, New Jersey. The next night, Bruce Wayne was out on a date with his girlfriend Linda Page. They were exiting the Chez Louis, a very high-class French restaurant in Gotham, and they were walking towards Robinson Park. It was a nice, quiet summer night, and Linda was just very happy that in a couple weeks her Uncle Martin Page will be out of jail. And Linda turns to Bruce and says to Bruce, I want to thank you so much, since your foundation was able to clear my uncle's name. And Bruce says to Linda, it's no problem. I always knew your uncle was innocent of those charges, and I was just glad that the Wayne Foundation was able to find all the missing evidence needed to clear his name. In the back of Bruce's mind, he also wanted to give thanks to his alter ego Batman, who helped a tiny bit in the case. Well, as the 2 lovebirds were walking down the quiet sidewalks, in front of Robinson Park. As they were doing that, Bruce looked up to the sky momentarily and saw the bat signal shining in the sky. Then Bruce says to Linda, "Hey Linda, why don't we just call this a night? I have to get up early tomorrow and get some stuff done before I head into work." And Linda says to Bruce, "Yeah, that's a good idea. I have to head into work myself early tomorrow," she says. And then the two of them walked over to Bruce's car, and Bruce Wayne drops her off at her house. Afterwards, he makes his way back home to Wayne Manor. As soon as he got home to Wayne Manor, he quickly runs to his bedroom, takes off his dinner suit, and changes into his t-shirt and shorts, and then heads to the main study and heads down to the Batcave. Bruce did not take Dick with him since Dick was sound asleep and it was a school night. Bruce goes over to the Bat costume vault, takes out his bat suit, changes into Batman, and gets into the Batmobile and drives off. Later, on top of the GCPD building, Commissioner Gordon was waiting for Batman to appear, when suddenly he hears a familiar voice say,
"Commissioner."
Gordon turns around and says, "Ah, he finally came." And the commissioner says to Batman, "Well, old friend, what I called you here for was not because I needed help with solving a crime." He goes on to say to Batman, "I called you here because the U.S. Army has posted that one of their top secret explosives, called X-90, has been stolen." Then Batman says to the commissioner,
"Is it here in Gotham City?"
And the commissioner says, "No, not that I know of, but the Army alerted law enforcement throughout the northeastern and mid-Atlantic U.S., along with southeast Canada and parts of the midwestern U.S., about the possibility that the X-90 could be anywhere in the aforementioned area." And then the commissioner pulls out from a folder a picture of the entire northeastern U.S., along with southeastern Canada and parts of the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic states, in a giant bullseye, literally. And he says to Batman, "I'm not going to pay it no mind, because if someone was willing to rob a top secret military explosive, they will not likely be out here. They probably already taken it to another country." Batman agreed with the commissioner, and then the commissioner asked Batman, "So, any news on the Collins gang?" And Batman says to the commissioner,
"No, nothing new. Everything has been quiet since they pulled off that giant bank heist a few weeks ago, and the trail has gone cold."
The commissioner says to Batman, "Oh, that's just great. I was hoping for them at least to be captured before I go on that major policeman conference down in Houston." The Batman assures the commissioner that the Collins gang will be brought to justice before he goes off on his trip, and then Batman pulls his vanishing act when the commissioner's head was turned, and when the commissioner turned his head around, he sees Batman was gone, and Commissioner Gordon says, "One of these days I'm going to nail his cape to the ground." Meanwhile, in some part of Gotham City, in some hideout, the Collins gang was there, and their leader and founder, Greg Collins, says to the guys, "Well, gentlemen, now that we got the X-90, we're going to wait for the guy who paid us good money to give us instruction." The man who led the heist was finally identified as Larry, and Larry asked Greg, "So Greg, who's this mystery client that's hired us to steal experimental explosives, and what does he intend to do with it? Because I'm sure now the U.S. military is looking for it coast to coast." And Greg says to Larry, "I don't know who he is, but he identifies himself as DACA, and he claims that he's part of some big international criminal organization with deep pockets and a lot of resources." And Greg goes on to explain to Larry and the rest of the gang, and he says, if we pull off the next job perfectly, we'll become associates of this international organization. And he says being an associate with this international organization will pay very well. Then Tiny asks, "Well, Greg, how much did we get paid for this job?" And then Greg says to Tiny, "Well, we got paid $5 million in advance, and now that we got the X-90, we're going to get the other $5 million. And then one of the other guys in the gang is like, "What? We got paid $10 million for this?" And Greg, letting out a giant smile, says, "Yes, we did. And if we play our cards right in the next 24 hours, we're going to get another $5 million. All the members of the gang were shocked and awed about what they heard. Meanwhile, the next morning at Wayne Manor, Bruce and Dick were sitting down having breakfast. Bruce was having fried eggs over easied, 2 strips of bacon, and hash browns, while Dick Grayson was just having a bowl of cornflakes. As they were eating, Bruce Wayne's new butler, Alfred, was coming up to Dick, and he says to Dick, "Here you go, Master Dick, your coffee." And Dick Grayson says, "Thank you, Alfred." And then Alfred asks Bruce, "So, Master Bruce, what did the commissioner want last night?" And Bruce says, "Really, nothing. He was just calling me to warn me about some sort of stolen top secret military explosives." Alfred says to Bruce, "Really?" And Bruce says, "Yeah, but I doubt that these explosives are here in the U.S. If anyone's going to steal explosives like that, they probably took it to another country where it's for sale on the black market." Dick says, "Yeah, that's probably true, Bruce." And then Dick looks at his watch and he says, "Hey, Bruce, it's already time. You got to get me to school." And Bruce like, "Oh yeah, hurry, let's go." And then the two men quickly get up and rush off to the garage. They get into Bruce's car and Bruce drives Dick to his high school. And Bruce says to Dick, "So, excited for the last day of school?" And Dick's like, "Yeah, but I'm nervous about these finals today. I'll be glad when it's over and I have 12 weeks of R&R." And Bruce says to Dick, "Don't worry, you'll pass it." And then he asks Dick, "So, today's a half a day. What time does the school get out?" And Dick says to Bruce, 1 o'clock. And Bruce says, "Okay, I'll see you then." And then Dick gets out of the car and runs into the campus. Meanwhile, later that day, the federal government receives a threat from the mysterious Daka, but he didn't identify himself in the message. The message simply read that he wanted $100 million in gold to be delivered to a specified location when he says, and if they did not comply, that he would use the X-90 in a very populated area in any of the East Coast states. In the message was a picture of all the East Coast states in red, and a picture of the X-90 out of the crate with detonators ready. And the government, of course, decided to keep it silent to not start a panic, but sent the bulletin to all the governors of each of those East Coast states. Later that day, the commissioner receives the dreaded federal emergency fax straight from the governor's office. The commissioner, reading the whole thing, quickly gets on his phone and was able to get a reach of the governor's office, where they did confirm that the fax was legitimate. Then the commissioner hangs up the phone, lets out a loud sigh, and begins to call an emergency meeting in the police department. Later that afternoon at Wayne Manor, Bruce had just got done taking a shower, and he was about to sit down in the living room to watch some TV when Aunt Harriet came up to him saying, "Oh, Bruce, I just started cooking dinner. It should be ready in about an hour." And Bruce says to Aunt Harriet, "Okay, Aunt Harriet," and then she walks off. As Bruce was about to turn on the TV, he hears the distant ring of the bat phone. Bruce gets up from the couch of the living room and heads over to the main study. And then he picks up the bat phone and then says to the commissioner, "Yes, Commissioner?" And then Commissioner Gordon fills him in on what's going on. After he was done, Bruce Wayne hangs up the bat phone and heads over to the table where the bust of William Shakespeare was at. He then pulls the head back, revealing the hidden switch, and activates the hidden switch, opening the secret passage to the Batcave. Bruce quickly goes down to the Batcave and sits in front of the Bat computer. He needed information on this X-90 and what it could do. As he was hacking into the government database, he was able to find all the information on the X-90 and was shocked on how powerful and explosive it was. As he was reading, Dick comes up to him and says, "Oh, I thought I'd find you down here, Bruce. What's going on?" Alfred said he heard the bat phone. And then Bruce explains to Dick everything that was going on, and he goes on to explain to Dick the situation and what was X-90. After he was done, he says to Dick, "After dinner, when the sun sets, we'll come back down here, change into our suits, and head over to the GCPD building." Sure enough, after dinner, they were back down the Batcave. They changed into their costumes and jumped into the Batmobile and took off. Later at the GCPD building, the commissioner was on the roof waiting for them. He was smoking his cigarette, looking out at the city, when he heard the familiar flapping of capes. He turns around and sees Batman and Robin behind him, and he says to them, "Oh, thank God you guys came. So, did you find out anything?" asked the commissioner. And then Batman says to the commissioner,
I did, and it's a very powerful chemical explosive. It depends on the charge applied to it. The weaker the charge, the less powerful the explosive, but the greater the charge, the more powerful the explosive. They believe that the third X-90 was used to destroy the cargo ship that was carrying it.
And then Batman further explains to the commissioner on the power of the X-90.
When the X-90 was secretly tested out in the Nevada desert on the maximum charge, its explosive yield was at nearly to the power of the Hiroshima bomb. The idea behind the X-90 is to develop a bomb with the power of a nuclear bomb without the ill effects of radiation.
Then Harvey Bullock comes up to the roof and he says, "Hey, Commish, I hate to disturb your meeting with your pet freak, but I have something very interesting here." And Harvey Bullock holds up a DVD-ROM. Moments later, at the commissioner's office, the commissioner puts in the DVD-ROM into the DVD-ROM player of his PC, while Harvey Bullock was explaining to him and Batman and Robin about what was on the disc, saying to them, "Well, we got a call today from the daytime manager at a boat rental place out in one of the docks, and he was saying that one of his employees that works at night rented out 2 boats to 2 men, and when they came back, there was more men, and they were bringing in something." And exactly as Harvey was explaining it, they see it on the video. When the 2 men go out on empty boats, they return later full of other men, and they were hauling something out of the other boat. At that moment, the commissioner froze the video from when they were close enough to the camera to see what they were hauling, and sure enough, even though the video quality was poor, they could see the marks on the crate labeled X-90, and the commissioner says, "Oh, just great. They brought it here to Gotham. Now that stolen bomb is somewhere here in Gotham." And then Batman says to the commissioner,
Rip the video from the disk and send me a copy. I'll use the back computer to clean up the image and see if I can identify those men.
Then Batman and Robin climb out the commissioner's window and leap and glide off. Later at the Batcave, Batman was using the back computer to clean up the video image and then use the face recognition program to see who the men in the video were. Sure enough, the back computer ID'd all the men. Later, at the infamous Park Row, Tiny was walking down the street. He was heading to one of the strip clubs at the infamous red light district. As he was walking, suddenly he steps on a snare and he's pulled up. Tiny was now hanging upside down from a very tall building. He was screaming and panicking. Suddenly, a hand grabs his dirty blonde hair and pulls him a bit upright. It was Batman, and Batman says to Tiny,
X-90, talk now.
And Tiny says to Batman, "I don't know nothing about any X-90. You got the wrong guy." And Batman says to Tiny,
Listen, I am not the police. I will drop you. The fall won't kill you, but when you recover in the hospital, you wish I had killed you.
Then Tiny says to Batman, Okay, we're taking the X-90 out to Washington, D.C. Batman asks Tiny why they're doing this kind of threat, and Tiny responds back to Batman, "It's not us. Somebody's paying us good money to do all the dirty work." Tiny confessed to everything. After he was done, Batman knocked him out cold and left him hanging on the side of the building upside down. Batman reported everything to the commissioner, and the commissioner, utilizing the Paytrack, decided to do a quick raid on the warehouse where the Cons gang was hiding out at. Hours later, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and Greg was telling Larry, "I don't like this. Tiny never came back. Something's wrong." And Greg says to Larry, "You're right, something is wrong. That's why we gotta move now." And he asks Larry, "So, is everything loaded into the truck?" And Larry says to Greg, "Yes, the guys are in the truck, and one of the X-90 bombs are in the truck too." and he says to Greg, if we leave now, I could probably make DC by the mid-afternoon. Greg says to Larry, yes, go now. And Larry says to Greg, alright, I'm out of here. So Larry was exiting the office on the upper floors when suddenly he heard the familiar sound of a bullhorn saying,
"This is the police. You are surrounded. Please come out with your hands up."
Larry says a loud profanity and starts to run across the catwalk. And sure enough, he heard the familiar sound of a door breaking down, and the police were coming in screaming, "Freeze!" Soon the men that were on the ground level started to shoot at the police, and the police shot back. As the firefight was occurring below, suddenly in the giant window behind Greg's desk, Batman and Robin swing in, breaking through the window. Greg quickly pulls out his pistol and takes a shot at the dynamic duo, but they quickly leap out the way, and Batman flings a batarang at Greg's face, cutting Greg's face. Greg screams and drops the gun, and then Batman quickly gets up and knocks him out cold. Then he signals Robin to go after Larry, and he chases Larry on the catwalk while Batman quickly runs out of the office and glides down to where the firefight was and begins taking out the Collins gang. Meanwhile, on the catwalk above, as Robin was starting to catch up to Larry, Larry had reached the ladder at the far edge. He quickly turns around, pulls a pistol, and takes 2 shots at Robin. Since the catwalk was narrow, there was no way for Robin to get out the way, and he takes 2 bullets in the chest. But thanks to the chemical formula that makes Batman and Robin's costume hard like steel armor, the bullets do not go through the costume, but they do knock Robin onto his back. It felt like he'd just been punched 2 times by a very strong man, and his chest was hurting. Larry quickly slides down the ladder, and he heads over to where the second X-90 bomb was at. He pulls out a key from his pocket. It was the key to the X-90 detonator. Then he puts it into the keyhole, twists it, sets a timer for 3 minutes, and sets the bomb intensity to number 4, and then he quickly pulls the key to the truck, gets into it, and starts the truck up. There was a guy in the passenger seat who had kneeled down to take cover from the firefight. He quickly gets up and he says to Larry, "Larry, how are we going to get out of here?" And Larry says to him, "Don't worry." Soon Larry puts the truck in gear and starts pulling out of the warehouse. As he was doing that, Robin quickly tosses a tracking device that sticks to the roof of the truck. Then the truck turns onto a back street of the warehouse. It was also surrounded by the police, but Larry didn't care. He quickly jumps the curb and was intended to run down the policemen who had put the barricade there, but they quickly leapt out the way. They didn't bother taking a shot at the truck due to fears that they were going to hit the bomb. Soon, the truck plows through the barricade and gets back onto the road and drives off. While in the warehouse, the firefight was over. Most of the Collins gang was either dead, beat unconscious, or fled. The commissioner quickly walks up to Batman and thanks Batman for helping out. Then Robin runs up to Batman and the commissioner saying,
"Batman, Commissioner, one of the guys just activated the X-90 bomb for 3 minutes.
Robin led them to where the bomb was, and with their horror, they did see that the bomb was counting down. It was now down to 2 minutes and 10 seconds. And then Batman investigated the bomb, and he saw that the dial was set to level 4, and he says to the commissioner, "Commissioner, the level 4 intensity, if I'm guessing correctly, would level down several neighborhood blocks." And the Batman says to the commissioner that there was no time to get the bomb squad here. And then the commissioner says, "Oh, holy hell." And he gets on his radio and he orders all the police and the police helicopters to evacuate the area. Unfortunately, there would be no time to evacuate several neighborhood blocks. And then the commissioner says to Batman, "Batman, I forgot to mention, the detonator is failsafe. We try to defuse it, it might send the jolt to the X-90. And then Batman says to the commissioner,
The good thing about the X-90 detonators is it's not a typical detonator. It just sends an electric charge to the X-90, which causes a chemical reaction that causes the explosion. So all we have to do is cut the wire.
Then Batman reaches into his utility belt and pulls out the small cutting laser and cuts the wire with the cutting laser. Once that was done, then Batman detaches the detonator from the X-90 and flings it far across into the middle of the warehouse. As soon as it lands, the time was up and the detonator sends the charge, which causes sparks to fly from the severed ends of the cables. Everybody breathed a sign of relief, and the commissioner once again thanked Batman. And then Batman says to the commissioner,
We have to go. We have to find the truck with the last X-90.
And Robin says to Batman,
I managed to slip a tracking device onto the roof of the truck.
Batman says to Robin,
Excellent. It'll make tracking that truck down a lot easier.
So the dynamic duo leave the warehouse and get onto the roof of a neighboring building. They run and leap onto the roof of another building where there was a vehicle waiting for them, none other than the Batcopter, an old Vietnam-era Cobra attack helicopter modified for Batman's needs. As Batman and Robin were getting into the helicopter, Robin comments to Batman how he did good on following his gut instinct and taking the helicopter instead of the Batmobile for tonight's mission. As soon as they both got into the helicopter, they shut the door and Batman starts her up. As Batman was flying the helicopter, he adjusts the tracking device signal and picks up that the truck was now just entering Tricorner Island. Batman then flies the helicopter faster. Thanks to the newer turboshaft engine that he put on the helicopter was now flying over 200 miles an hour. As they were starting to get into Tricorner Island, Batman got a visual on the truck. He slows down the throttle and lowers the altitude of the helicopter. Then he tells Robin to get the missile system ready, and Robin did that. He activates the missile system, activates the targeting system, and locks on and fires. Direct hit. The truck was destroyed, completely destroying the X-90 and the men that were in there. The Batcopter pulls away and flies off. As it was doing that, Batman informed the commissioner that he took out the truck. And as the Batcopter was flying back home, Batman was thinking in his mind to what Tiny told him earlier that night when he interrogated him, that someone paid them to do that dirty work. He was wondering who was that individual or individuals. Well, dear listeners, he will soon find out. Like and subscribe. The end.